Welcome back to Chuck Builds. Today we are setting up Zigbee to MQTT on my new Home Assistant, and that is because I have moved. So this is a part of my series where I'm setting everything up from scratch. I've already covered this in previous videos on my channel, and I have a full write-up on my website, chuck-builds.com. I'm going to be following along to my own guide to set this up to make sure it all still works. But if you need more detail, please check out that other video. Just as a quick note before we dive in, I am shaking things up a little bit. I'll be using this SMLight SLZB-06 as my new Zigbee coordinator. I had previously, for the last 4 years or so, used this Sonoff coordinator, but this SMLight one has had great reviews, and I'm very curious to try it out. The antenna size is a little bit bigger, but the device itself is bulkier. I've read great reviews, and I just wanted an excuse to try it. And setting up a new Zigbee network is a great excuse because I won't have to repair all my devices multiple times. I can just add them straight to this new one. So because this is Power over Ethernet, the setup will be slightly different using an IP address instead of a USB port, but this does also work over USB ports if you choose to use that. We're going to set this up on PoE, so let me plug that in and we'll go get started. Inside of Home Assistant, and then I'm going to be referencing my guide here, we're going to scroll down. We'll get to step 1. So the first thing we need to do is install the Mosquito Broker add-on. So we'll go to Settings in Home Assistant. We'll go to Add-ons and then the Add-on Store. And we're going to look for Mosquito Broker. I'm looking right past it, I think. Let's type it, and then we'll click Install. And I'm going to set this to start on boot in Watchdog. Watchdog makes sure it starts up automatically if it crashes. I want this on all the time. We'll come over to our configuration, just give it a quick glance. Looking good. Looks like it's running. Check our logs. Looks like it's still up. So we are now going to go back to our settings here. So you can follow step 2 in my guide to go to the add-on store and add the repository yourself. There's a link here that we're just going to copy, paste, open the link, and then add it to our Home Assistant. And then we now have Zigbee to MQTT down here. If it's not showing up, just do a refresh of your page. And then we're going to click on Zigbee to MQTT and then click Install. And I want to note, because I'm using PoE on this, step 5 doesn't apply, but if you're using a USB dongle, I strongly recommend that you use a USB extension. Getting that antenna away from your PC makes a huge improvement on signal and speed of your Zigbee network. I feel like that often people complain about Zigbee. I've personally never had any issues, but we're going to do everything we can to make this as reliable as possible. And the first thing you can do is get a USB extender. We'll go through the other settings later in this video. So now that Zigbee to MQTT is installed, we're going to turn on Watchdog, which will auto restart if it crashes, and then show in sidebar for easy access, because I do access Zigbee to MQTT quite often. We're going to come over to the configuration side, and we're going to need a serial section here. This is how Zigbee to MQTT can reach your dongle. So in the write-up guide, if you are using USB, I have a whole write-up on how to find that USB key and name to type here. But because we're going to be using something on PoE using an IP address, we're going to type port:// the IP address, which you can get from your router. And I logged into my router, DHCP leases, and I can see 192.168.86.113 is my SLZB-06, and it's on. So I'm going to type in that. And then we also need to use the default port, which is going to be :6638. And we'll click Save right here. And then we can come over to the Info tab and click Start. And we go to our logs, we'll see that the onboarding page is available. So we'll open the web UI and it'll bring us to the onboarding. We're not going to mess with much of this. The thing that we need to probably pay the most attention to is going to be closest Wi-Fi channel and network channel. So our closest Wi-Fi channel and network channel are about interference on your wireless network. I have a whole video and guide about this on my blog on how to minimize Zigbee and Wi-Fi interference. But at a high level, what you need to know is that Zigbee and Wi-Fi are both on the 2.4 gigahertz wireless spectrum, and Wi-Fi channel 1 here, this plateau, overlaps very highly with channels 11 through 14. And so if my Wi-Fi is on channel 1 and my Zigbee is on channel 11, this small red peak above it is all that's really going to be easily seen or clearly seen. If I were on Wi-Fi channel 1, I would want my Zigbee network out on something like 25. But this gets complicated based on the number of neighbors that you have. Now, this network channel, I think by default is 11. And for the sake of demonstration, we'll have it at 11. We have some software down here called Nearsoft Wi-Fi Info View. And once you download that, open the zip and extract it, you can run the exe. And this is what you'll see. What we can see here is our RSSI, our received signal strength, received signal indicator, I think. And the lower the number, such as 22, the stronger it is. Anything under 30 is really strong, quote, amazing. Anything between 60 and 30 is still really good and plenty to stream video. So here at 14 to 22, RSSI is really, really strong. And that's because my PC is right next to my access point. But we want to pay attention to after RSSI is going to be frequency. And we're only concerned about the 2.4 gigahertz frequency here. And that's because Zigbee is also 2.4. So if we see 5.7, we don't really care about that. We're just looking at 2.4s. Once we have that as the strongest frequency 2.4, let's look at the channel. Channel 1. So just like the example I was showing you, my channel 1 is very, very strong. This is going to be a huge peak. And then if the default channel was 11, it's going to really interfere with itself, with my home network. I want to call out here that I have a neighbor who seems to have several Eero pucks or devices dropped around their house that are all channel 11 on the 2.4 gigahertz, and they're pretty strong. They're in the 60s, and I'm going to try and avoid this just because it's the next strongest signal. If you're in an apartment complex, you might not be able to avoid all of the signals around you. When we look at our graphic over here for channel 1 of our Wi-Fi, this is my Wi-Fi, and then channel 11, this is my neighbor's Wi-Fi. So these blue and yellow peaks are showing a lot of busy air around me, and so I want to be in the green for my Zigbee. So if I know I want to be 6 Wi-Fi channel for Zigbee, I'm going to come straight down and see that I want to be probably 17, 18, or 19 to have that middle peak here and get away from 11. So what I'll do is come back over to Zigbee2MQTT, and I can say my closest Wi-Fi channel is 1. So by default, it's going to shoot me off to 25, which is the furthest away from 1. But my neighbor is in the middle of that, and his is not weak. So I think I want to be something like 18, 19, 20. 18 has a little bit of an overlap, so I'll go to 19 just to space that out. All right, I'm editing this video, and I found a good view in my Unify Network Manager where you can see your overlap or your environment for other broadcasts. So if you're on Unify, check this out before you pick your Zigbee network. This might be easier than using the Wi-Fi info view. I literally just stumbled upon this while editing, so I wanted to record it. But we can see here that I have a bit of overlap here from my desk, of all things, just because we're right next to it, for the upsy desky to raise and lower my desk over Home Assistant, which wild how much interference that's putting out. And then I have a lot of interference here in the 9 to 13 range, and then a lot in the 1 to 3 range. And so with our Zigbee picture that we have over here where Wi-Fi channel 6 is in the middle, and then we're slightly to the right of that for Zigbee channel 19, I think we're going to be right here on 7 or 8, and we should have good clearance, especially once I get rid of this upsy desky. But realistically, I could have gone straight to 6 and probably been fine. And even on top of that, really a lot of these would have been fine. My Wi-Fi is on a different, should be on this front area, and I have my Wi-Fi set to use channel 1 or 11. That's just what it's using right now, but I've told it explicitly to avoid 5, 6, or 7, and that's because of my Zigbee network. I could probably leave 5 alone. I'm pretty sure I just clicked 6, but it's fine. And so you get a little bit of control depending on your Wi-Fi setup and change your band that you're on. But it's good to use data and make sure you're making the right decision with this. I just happened to stumble upon this view in radios where you can go over here and go to environment and see what's around you and make sure you're on the 2.4 gigahertz band. Just throwing that out there. because it's topical and a lot of people are using Unify, I feel like, that are into this stuff. And I'm going to leave the rest of this alone. My MQTT user is add-ons. It's going to be the default core mosquito. The password is optional. I don't have it set. Front end is great and Home Assistant is enabled. So we'll come down here and click submit, and Zigbee to MQTT is now starting. And here we go. Zigbee to MQTT is started. So go to info, open web UI, and we can see our Zigbee to MQTT interface. And this is how we're going to be adding our Zigbee devices to Home Assistant. Now, in this new house, I've already purchased quite a few smart bulbs and installed them. So I'm going to power cycle a lamp next to me that is a Zigbee bulb. So the lamp next to me is a Philips Hue and it's not pairing, so I'll have to factory reset that one to get into Zigbee to MQTT. But I did turn on a light switch that had some inner INNR bulbs connected and they popped up right away. And so inside of here, Zigbee to MQTT, we can see the bulb. We can turn them on or off, change the color, and set the power on behavior. I want them to be on. Anytime the light switch is on, I want the lights on. I can control them smart ways later, but if someone accidentally turns it off and then turns it back on, I don't want it to be off in the on because then it confuses people. If you are applying power to the light bulb, I think it should always turn on. It might not be the smoothest automation, but when I was selling my last house, it really confused people when I had it on previous because it wasn't turning on. But here we can also see some other Philips devices are joining. And so I'm going to just walk around and try to power cycle as many devices as I can to get them into Zigbee to MQTT. So now that I have a few bulbs show up, I'm going to label them. This is going to be my front porch right. We're going to update it in Home Assistant. And then this is going to be front porch left and update that in Home Assistant. Now, something that I wish I was better about in my last house, and I'm going to start off strong in this new house, is going to be using groups. I'm going to create a group and call it porch lights. And then we'll select this group and add the devices front porch left and front porch right to the group. And why is this important? So when you use Zigbee to MQTT groups, you want to call this group in your automation. If you have a single bulb in a single room, that's fine. You can call that light bulb. But if you have 4 bulbs in your ceiling or 2 in the same area that you want them to act exactly the same, you want to call those together because the way that Zigbee works is a mesh network that bounces around a message between the items. So if you were to first say front porch right on, front porch left on, it sends a message twice to both of these light bulbs, checking if you are front porch left, no, pass it on to the next device. If you are front porch left, okay, turn on. Now, that's not a big deal for a small number of devices, but if you have a lot of smart lights especially, and you're turning on 8 lights at a time with one automation, you want to go in there and say, turn on the porch lights. And all of these devices there, for these 2 at least, they'll say, I'm a porch light, turn me on, okay. You don't have to say left, right. Or another example would be in my kitchen. I'm going to be installing some Philips Hue lights in there, and there's 6 bulbs. Instead of saying light 1 on and bouncing through all 6 lights until it finds the one, and then that turns on, and then it says light 2 on, bounces through all of those lights until it finds light 2, and then turns on. You can do that 6 times. That's 36 messages being sent out at least to say, we need to turn on these 6 lights. That really grows exponentially as your network grows. The reason that the groups are better is it's going to say turn on kitchen lights, and that's going to be one message going out, hitting all of these light bulbs, bouncing around in the mesh, and everything that's a kitchen light is going to turn on. This greatly reduces the amount of chatter or noise on your network, and this will add a lot to your reliability and speed of your Zigbee network, turning these lights on. And so now that we have our devices here inside of Zigbee to MQTT, we're halfway there. We need to get these devices into Home Assistant. So if we go to our settings and then our integrations, we don't have it set up yet. MQTT isn't here. So I'm just going to come to this MQTT button and click add and click submit. And this kind of ties together that Zigbee to MQTT to Home Assistant. The messaging protocol MQTT is in the middle, and that's what we're using. And later on, we'll be sending different applications to MQTT. It's not just Zigbee, but that's how we're interfacing with Home Assistant on a standardized messaging protocol. So here we can see our bulbs that we've added. We have a group that we created for our front porch lights. We have the bulb itself individually. And then we have another hue bulb that isn't connected, that I haven't set up. So we'll just click skip and finish. And we can see here in MQTT that we have these devices. So we've added items to our Zigbee to MQTT application, and I'm going to go around and connect the rest. And so by setting up the Zigbee groups, it's a little easier to turn on multiple lights. Instead of coming through and turning on all of these lights one by one, we have a kitchen lights group that turns them all on and off. And I like this because for automations, when you reference the kitchen, you don't have to list in every single automation every single time, light 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You just say kitchen lights. And let's say you add a light or you swap one out. All you do is come into Zigbee and go to your groups, choose your kitchen lights, and you can adjust it that way. You can have lots of groups for whatever display or layout works best for you. I tend to try and do an indoor lights, outdoor lights. So for a one click, if I'm on vacation, turn off everything inside. I think it makes it a little easier to manage going forward. This is something I wish I had done better on my last Home Assistant install, and I only had a few groups. I didn't have that many, and I constantly was catching myself in automations where I had listed them all one by one, and there'd inevitably be one bulb that was still on when the rest of the room was off, just because I messed up typing the name 6 times or something like that. Not necessarily going to break you here, but a good habit to get into as you go on and continue to build out this Home Assistant install, and especially using Zigbee. I think this makes it a lot more helpful, especially for a lot of devices.